Welcome to PCA's monthly market update. I'm Ed Sullivan, Chief Economist and Group Vice President at PCA. Today I'll take you through some of the existing trends on the economy, potential policy implications, and what that means for construction activity and cement consumption. So let's start. Let's start with the economics news we got. Two big pieces. Second quarter GDP growth came in at 2.3%. While that's disappointing, it was stronger than first quarter growth. We would expect much stronger growth to have materialized in this recovery period, particularly given the depth of the recession. At the same time, we observed monthly job growth of 225,000. That's strong. Typically, you don't achieve 225,000 net new jobs created with an economy growing only at 2.3%. Some suggest that there is a measurement issue going on, particularly with new technologies and how the government counts that, leading to an underestimation for GDP. This way, there's a disconnect between the information we receive about GDP and the information that we receive about the labor market. And that leads us to make a decision. Which data set do you believe? Well, we look around the surrounding fundamentals. We see consumers getting more confident. We see banks getting stronger and starting to ease availability a bit. We see several other issues where the economy appears to be gaining its footing. And that's consistent with a job market that's creating over 200,000 jobs a month. At this point, PCA is looking at the jobs market as the key indicator in terms of economic activity, and letting aside that there could be potential issues, measurement issues, regarding GDP. So what does that mean? Well, it means we expect the economy to continue on a pace somewhere in excess of 3% going forward. It also suggests that if jobs are increasing at a rate of over 200,000 a month, and the unemployment is flirting with a little bit more than 5%, you would expect to see some wage gains occur in a greater extent that they have. What this suggests is that potentially the natural rate of unemployment is much lower than we expect, that it could be closer to 4% rather than 5%. And that suggests that the economy still has some slack, it still has some movement to go before wage pressures materialize. That also says that the Federal Reserve has a larger window before it starts to increase its rates. We're now looking at a fourth quarter increase action by the Federal Reserve to increase rates. And keep in mind, it very possibly could be even later than that. The fundamentals remain strong, and that's being backed by construction activity. Construction activity moved sideways but this past month, but if you compare that compared to a year ago, it's double-digit gains. Very strong growth. We're expecting that to continue. The wild card here is residential, particularly single-family residential. We'd expected a starts level of 1.17, and I think we're going to struggle to meet that. On the other side, non-residential and public are exceeding expectations. And so what does it all translate into cement? Well, in June, cement consumption rose year over year 3.8%, pretty much in expectation. That comes out to a seasonally adjusted annual rate of 89 million metric tons. If we see stepwise increases in July and August of 4 million tons on a seasonally adjusted basis in each month, then our forecast for 7.5% growth could still materialize. At this point, we're waiting for that one last data point before we make our forecast revisions later this month. With that, I want to thank you.
My name is Dave Zwicke, PCA's regional economist, and I'll be providing this month's update of regional economic trends. In terms of job creation, we saw roughly 223,000 jobs created in the U.S. on a national basis, and this is a slight deceleration from what we saw in May, in which 254,000 jobs were created. While job growth did decelerate slightly in June, it still remains above 200,000, which is telling us there's very strong economic and job growth throughout the U.S. In terms of a regional perspective, the breadth of job growth also decelerated, where in June we saw about 31 states create jobs in June. This compares against 39 in May. So there was a little bit of a contraction in terms of the breadth of employment growth, but in terms of where those states that we're starting to see some weakness in terms of job growth are largely concentrated in oil-producing, energy-producing states, and therefore it's not unsurprising that there is a decline in terms of job growth, given that there's been even more weakness in terms of oil prices in the last few weeks and months. In terms of more of a regional basis, the West continues to lead the nation in terms of year-over-year growth, where we're seeing roughly 2.8% year-over-year growth in terms of jobs created in the West. And this compares against the South, which is up about 2.2% over the last few months, and while the Midwest and Northeast are up roughly 1.4% in terms of job growth. Specifically in terms of census divisions, Pacific and Mountain districts are leading the nation in terms of numbers 1 and 2 in terms of job creation as well as unemployment rates. The South Atlantic is number 3, and whereas the West North Central is currently the laggard at number 9 of the 9 census districts, followed by also Mid-Atlantic, which is number 8 in terms of job creation. Shifting towards construction activity for the June update. Housing starts advanced very strong in June. In particular, housing permits, which serve as a leading indicator for construction activity, are currently at an 8-year high for both single and multifamily combined. When we look at it on a regional basis, New England is up 80.3% year to date in terms of multifamily and single family construction permits. Second is the West, which is up 18.2%. The South is up 11%, and the Midwest is currently down 1.7%. Now, going back to New England, which is up about 80.3%, that's largely being driven by multifamily housing permits. Multifamily in particular is up 150% year to date. And of that, when you drill down to a more regional basis, New York is currently up 280% in terms of multifamily permits. So that's definitely driving that large increase we're seeing in the New England area. And that's due to a large issuance of permits in both May and June, where we saw a rapid acceleration in a short period of time in New England. When you back out multifamily permits and focus more on single family, which from our perspective, on a cement perspective, gives you a little bit more window into future cement consumption on a residential basis, because on average, a single family start will consume about 2 to 3 times more cement than that of a multifamily start. And when you look at just single family by itself, the West is currently leading with about 14% growth year to date, followed by the South, which is up 12%. And that is consistent with our forecast, where we expect to see the strongest residential growth in the South and the West, particularly the Southeast and South and West. The Midwest is currently up about 4% year to date in terms of single family permits, and the Northeast is actually down 8%. And we think that's largely due to weather, as there was some harsh winter weather which carried over in the spring, which delayed the single family home construction. And also keep in mind that while the Northeast is actually up 80% overall, and single family is down 8%. We think that'll kind of moderate as we move throughout the year. We start to see an increase in single family construction activity. Lastly, for this update, I'd like to discuss some of the regional trends we're seeing in terms of cement consumption. And based on our advanced shipment report for June, the South was up 10%, and the Northeast was up about 5%. The West was the third strongest advancer at about 3% for June, whereas the Midwest was down about 6% this last June based on our advanced shipments. The decline in the Midwest we expect is largely impacted by weather, as we saw some very strong, I should say more persistent rains throughout the Great Lakes, which is likely to lead to the slight decline we've seen in Midwest cement consumption for June. And one thing that's also very encouraging is the South was the leading region, which is up 10%. And this also includes Texas, which also saw some harsh winter weather, or more harsh rainy weather towards the end of June. And therefore, the fact that they were up 10% is also very encouraging for long-term growth of the region, particularly the southern region. And with that, I'd like to conclude this current month's update. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact myself or Ed Sullivan. Thank you.